Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, this is 1979's The Sadist of Notre Dame, directed by my favorite director, Jess Franco. It says on the top here, on the front, practitioner of gruesome satanic rites. Beautiful artwork here. This movie was unearthed by Severin Films right here, folks. This is the back of the black Blu-ray case. Hard to get some screenshots here, but you get some. I believe that's Jess Franco's stepdaughter in that right there. And here it is, folks, The Sadist of Notre Dame. This is an unearthed film, a film from Jess Franco that is extremely rare and hard to find in this particular version. And I do mean this particular version because I did a video on this page for Jess Franco's Exorcism. And The Sadist of Notre Dame works off of core concepts of exorcism and kind of some core footage of exorcism, but that expands upon it into different horizons and directions and storylines. And The Sadist of Notre Dame is an entirely unique film to exorcism. It would be looked at as an alternate version of exorcism, I guess, but there is footage in exorcism that's not in here, and there's a ton of footage in here that's not in exorcism. And that footage is primarily from Mr. Franco himself because he's playing the lead role in this film. And I would say it's more of a lead than the role that he's playing in exorcism. So this is The Sadist of Notre Dame, an entirely new cinematic experience. If you've seen Exorcism, this is an entirely new experience and one that you will cherish alongside Exorcism as, well, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to talk about this film. I have some notes written here, so you're going to see my eyes divert, and I can't wait to talk about 1979's The Sadist of Notre Dame. Well, first, here's a couple themes, a couple concepts that I was conjuring and dealing with as I watched this film and after I watched this film. The themes of the theology, or theology and the mind. So the study of God and the mind. Christian theology and the implications for a troubled mind. Does the theology breed the mind, the troubled mind, or is the concoction of theology with a troubled mind the danger? You could almost argue that anything with a troubled mind could be dangerous. But is Christian theology more dangerous than the other things to the mind? Is it the most dangerous thing to the mind? The idea of different interpretations of Christian scripture. The idea of the church's placement of troubled minds. And is the church responsible? The church's responsibility. We look at the concept, a concept that's in much of Franco's art, which is the theater, the show. And that is taken on in new heights in The Sadist of Notre Dame, and you can hear me talk about that in the similarities, some of the similar pieces of the film experience in here with Exorcism. You can see it in my Exorcism video. I'll expand upon the theater and the show and the way that this film and Exorcism deal with that in a completely unique way in Franco's world. A black mass, sexuality, and God. The connections and the oppositions to each other as well. Loneliness, desire, lust. Is lust a bad word? Is repression holy or evil? Is Christian theology repressive of natural humanity, and is that dangerous? These are some of the themes, some of the concepts that I was seeing here in The Sadist of Notre Dame. I'm going to go out and I'm going to say that this is definitely, possibly the best Jess Franco acting I've seen in his films. I always believed he was an underrated actor, folks. He's very serious. He's very passionate, and he's never overdone. And in The Sadist of Notre Dame, he reaches new heights. I mean, he is the lead in this film. He is the core of this film in the acting department, and he's intense, he's powerful, he's legit, he's real, troubling, disturbing, dark, twisted, and very, very complex. The way Franco is filmed in this movie as a character seems to be extremely similar to the way women are typically filmed in Franco's films. And I've never seen Franco filmed like that before. Franco's eyes, his expressions, his pauses, his fire, his insanity, his rage, his chaos, his passion, religious fervor. This is, I think, pretty much the darkest lit, physically darkest lit Franco film I've seen. And it looks awesome. And it's tied. There's a reason, there's a purpose. It's tied, really feels tied to the atmosphere of this entire storyline. This is a film of shadows and street lights at night. It's one of the few also cold Franco films. They're wearing jackets. It's not tropical. It's cold, along with Blue Rita, which I believe is almost, maybe some of these was maybe filmed in the same locations as Blue Rita, maybe. But it's cold like Blue Rita. It's cold like Eugenie with Soledad, the film of incest. Both films which I've looked at on this YouTube page as well. So there's a lot of firsts for this Franco film. There's a lot of extremes in this Franco film. And what I mean extremes, the darkest lit film, the best Franco acting, one of the few cold Franco films. Daniel White does the music for this film, does the score for this film, and he's done tons of Franco films. And there's a main piece of chill-inducing, wondrous organ music in this film. And I realized that I knew the organ music from one of Jess Franco's last films, which I've looked at on this YouTube page, Al Pieta vs. the Alligator Ladies. And it was so weird watching this film and hearing the organ music, because it just reminded me of Al Pieta vs. the Alligator Ladies. That was the cinematic world my mind was in, because I associate this organ music with that movie. And I don't think I really realized that the organ music in here, or that the organ music in Al Pieta vs. the Alligator Ladies was not original, or, to that film. So interesting. We have straight up horror music in this film. Dark, scary, horrific vibes. Yes, straight up. But we also have just a little bit of Franco's kind of funk, jazz, and some disco dancing, even at a club, which seems to be a dance club, which seems to be melding hippies and disco kings and queens, interestingly enough. It's very evident that Franco's musical definition of sex is jazz, because even in a dark, disturbing film like The Sadist of Notre Dame, in the category of Franco's darkest and most disturbing films, so another first. When there is sexual activity at times in this film, all of a sudden jazz music will peer through. And I've seen that in other Franco films a lot too, no matter what the tone of a Franco film is. When there is some sort of sexual activity, or if jazz is going to erupt, it's tied, it's connected to sexuality. And we have this one orgy scene where there's reverb on the breathing and the moans, wow, over jazz. This is one of the most viciously, brutally violent Jess Franco films as well. I didn't say gory and bloody, although there is blood in the film. It's biting and stabbing and beating and mixing sexuality and Christianity and violence. That is a very, 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 very dangerous mix right there. Viciously violent film, and it's, you know, they say sometimes that that stabbing someone is a worse crime than shooting someone. In terms of a worse crime, what I mean is some people say there's more hatred in stabbing someone than there isn't just merely pulling a trigger. And you can see the definition of that, kind of the breakdown of that in this film. The stabbings take on hatred, take on passion and fervor and chaos and rage. It's very troubling, very disturbing stuff. Lena Romay is in this film, looking beautiful. And you really see her in this film and in all of her films to her last day, to Franco's modern films and then her first films. You know, I think of Lorna the Exorcist, which I've looked at on this YouTube page as well. Lena Romay has unabashed acting, free of all boundaries. When she acts, you can tell this is a woman who was not just going for the throat when she made films, when she acted. She was also behind the camera for some of Franco's films as well, editing some of his hardcore features too. But a woman who lived her life without boundaries, without the restrictions of authorities. And you can sense that wild, unabashed freedom in her acting. And this might be one of the only films I can think of right now where I see Lena Romay channeling Soledad Miranda in certain scenes of her character in this film. There's even her walking in the city with a long, dark, black cloak that reminded me so much of Soledad near the beginning of the film. Because Franco has sometimes said in interviews, oh, you know, he believed that Lena was kind of like a reincarnation of Soledad and had that same vibe. In this film, I really see that. I really see that in this film. You know, look at Lena's open mouth, like in Lorna the Exorcist. You'll see her in here, the Sadist of Notre Dame, her open mouth, and what that means of the intensity of her face and her mouth and her screams. There are times of total silence in this film as well. Maybe some of the most silent Franco sequences I've seen. You know, in this film is violent rage on one side, violent rage, and on the other side, quiet loneliness. It's disturbing. It's psychological, it's spiritual, it's that concoction put into a blender. This is a film of architecture as well. The rooms are characters in this film. One room in particular was shot only, it seems, in a wide-angle lens. The carpet, look at the carpet, look at the beds, look at the tables, look at the crosses, the religious shrine in one of the rooms. The architecture is unbelievable in this film. The staircases, the exteriors and the interiors. This is a film, I said it was cold. It's also a film that's always cloudy outside too. I think there's one section of the film where it seems that the sun is peering out a bit, and that's it. But it's a very, very cloudy film. Very cloudy. Overcast. Just... if you have like arthritis in your knee would start hurting watching this film, you know, that kind of vibe. It's also interesting that there's black masses taking place in this film during the daytime. I thought that was very unique and very interesting. The camera in this film is sometimes very, very still, stagnant in a corner of a room, constantly mimicking that same corner just for that room. Moving around and then going back to that corner, a stationary position. But it's also sometimes Franco wildly or erratically moving. there's elements of this film that remind me of Franco's Jack the Ripper. And there's other elements of the film that remind me, I guess, with the exteriors of Blue Rita. This is The Sadist of Notre Dame. You know, sexually speaking, we have, as I said, sexual violence, S&M, sadism, full nudity from the women in the film. And, you know, you're seeing their vaginas, you're seeing their breasts, you're seeing their butts, their legs, their bodies dancing, the sexuality of their bodies dancing. You're seeing a woman bent over, kind of almost looking in her ass, just a tiny bit, not too much. Full nudity, seemingly simulated sex scenes. And then, as I said, you also have sex mixing with violence as well. As that one Jane's Addiction song says, off their Nothing Shocking album. This is 1979's The Sadist of Notre Dame by Mr. JESS Franco. I love him. Love this, and I can't wait to talk about Symphonia Erotica, which is another one that was released with this by Severin Films. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like 1979's The Sadist of Notre Dame. Oh! And foot fans, foot fetish fans, you will have an amazing shot of Lena Romay's feet. And this great shot in a corner reading a book with the lighting. And I kind of expound on that a little bit more in the exorcism video, so you can check that out as well, on that whole scenario of reality and the written word. So I tried to cover some different areas with this video, so watch Exorcism also to get some of the commonalities between the two. Please feel free to check out my own personal films by youtube.com/poopydiarrhea, that's POOPYDIARRHEA, or Googling Apartment 1014 Films. Thank you so much, and good night.